Hey, what's up, educators? It's Thursday, and this is episode 4, Surviving the Weeks Before Winter Break. I can't believe that we are in that in between time of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and most of us are definitely in survival time. That's what today's show is about, helping you survive and thrive the Christmas countdown. So, thanks so much for being here, and thank you so much for those people that were there able to make it to the launch party. Woohoo! Last week. It was super exciting, and I'm really grateful to each of you. And if you weren't able to come and you missed it, it's no biggie. You're here now, and that's what counts. So let's get to it.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, what's up? This is Trina Debery. All right, today we don't actually have a guest today. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about surviving before the holiday vacation. Anyway, so the weeks after Christmas or after Thanksgiving and before Christmas can be like some of the hardest weeks in teaching, besides the very end of the year, which we'll talk about at another time. But those last few weeks, and especially when Thanksgiving is early, and then you have like this year, like it's early, so you have 4 weeks before Christmas vacation, and it's like, oh my goodness, you got to be kidding me! Like that's a long time. And so I wrote a blog post titled How to Guarantee Survival the Weeks Before Christmas Vacation. And I did that because I thought, how in the world do people survive during this time? I know for me, it was like super hard. And I thought I was going to go crazy. So, because it's a daunting time, it's so overwhelming, and they can lead to a type of teacher tire that can only be explained by a teacher. And that is like exhausted beyond measure. And it really can be one of the most exhausting times of teaching, right up to there with back to school and end of the year. The kids are so excited. The teachers are just trying to survive. So I went to digging into my memory and investigating a guaranteed survival guide for those last few weeks of school before the holiday bonanza begins. Because let's face it, the holidays aren't much of a time for rest and rejuvenation for any of us, because we jump right into the madness and craziness of our families for most of us, where we kind of think, maybe I want to go back to the craziness with the kids. So conserving your energy is going to take some well thought out planning. And who has the time or oomph to do that? So I ended up jumping on to a couple of Facebook groups that I'm in and asking the question of how do you survive the weeks, the weeks before Christmas vacation or winter break. And I got some hilarious responses that I want to share with you because they were just great. The majority, it was interesting to me because when it like kind of depended on the age, the age level of the kids. Now, I'm in like a primary group, I'm in a second grade specifically, a third grade specifically, and a STEM group, and a media specialist group, and a homeschool group. I'm in so many different kinds of groups. But the ones that I noticed that the older the kids were, like in the STEM group especially, that's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter between like upper elementary and middle school and even some high school teachers sometimes. And their advice was to just keep teaching. Like you were just teaching and you were teaching and you were teaching and teaching and teaching. And that you didn't change anything. Everything stayed exactly the same. You were teaching the same way you would if it was in February or September or whatever. That there was really no altering it. Now, a few people said that they would do some Christmas like STEM challenges, which I thought that sounded kind of fun. So a lot of it's what it seemed like a lot of older teachers, not older teachers, older grade levels. A lot of older grade levels were pretty specific about just keep going, and that you're really not making it a big deal. I noticed and even in the third grade group, it was still a lot of that. Like stick with your consistency and your procedures. Now, I do think it's important to stay consistent, and I do think that kids definitely crave consistency. That was according to one of the teachers, and I totally agree with that. I think they crave consistency, and they need it in order not to like totally fly off the handle. However, on the other hand, like they're little, they're kids, and they are excited about a time that is meant for them to be excited. And yes, we have a lot of hype on the holidays and Santa, and everybody has a different opinion about what that is and what that should mean and if that should even be the case. But we'll save that for a different time. And yes, there's many different other types of traditions and celebrated of days that are not specifically Christmas. And I definitely think those are important, and I respect people in their different cultures. But I'm specifically talking about, like, what do you do if you are like really going to celebrate Christmas and you're really thinking about Christmas. And even if you're not, it's kind of in your face no matter what. And this is probably not the episode that you want to listen to, because it's like in your face, just like it is at Target and just like it is on every single commercial. It's a holiday, and it already started. Like, it started before we even had Thanksgiving, which the time of this recording is we haven't even had Thanksgiving, but I feel like we skipped Thanksgiving this year. Like, we totally went from Halloween to Christmas with zero Thanksgiving. There's been a couple of advertisements for Black Friday, and that's the only thing that has felt like Thanksgiving related, and everything else has just immediately jumped to Christmas. I mean, my neighbors are even like all Christmas out, and we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet. So anyway, back to the point. So I noticed in the third grade group that they were still really, they wanted to be really consistent, and they were very clear about like sticking to your routines and your procedures. Second grade started getting a little bit more creative. And they came up with some really funny and really fun solutions. And I think I got a little bit off track because I wanted to say that for me, I definitely think you have to embrace it, because kids, they are thinking about it, it's on their mind, and this is a time where they love it, and it can be really fun with your kids. I totally think it can be fun. I had a lot of responses. I had to read you some of these because I just think they're so funny. Like, first of all, again, like there was a lot that said just continue with your routines and your procedures. But like some people, like there was a teacher in the primary group, and that was another group that really had some creative and fun things. And I just think it's interesting to see a different perspective from like a early elementary, like a first grade teacher, kindergarten teacher, early elementary to like, a more of a middle school mentality. And it's just like such a different mentality. So I just think it's interesting. But one of them said that they try to have a fun way. They keep reading and working, and like they do a reader's theater, which I thought, oh, a reader's theater, that sounds fun, because the kids get so involved in things like reader's theater. They want to learn the script. They work together as a team. They come up and they present it. They are working on fluency. They're working on rereading, and they're decoding, and there are all kinds of things that are happening during that, which can feel a little bit out of their routine if you're not doing reader's theater on a regular basis. Can feel a little bit out of routine, but at the same time, like in a good way, because you're still practicing skills. So I thought that was a really good response. And then another teacher named Maggie from a primary group that I'm in, she was talking about making sure you're doing a lot of hands-on activities, and that the kids are usually off the chain, but that it's important to like refuel that week so that you can, because what's coming, like what's coming for their last couple days. Somebody said a lot of people were talking about like almost like not necessarily bribery, but kind of a type of that, where they will write like a word on the board, like the word Christmas, or they'll write the word Christmas party or something like that. And if the class as a whole is giving you a difficult time, then you erase a letter, and you can get to the point where you're not having the party at all. I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I feel like, yes, sometimes that can really work for you. Like, you can get your kids to like peer pressure each other to do what they're supposed to do, which I do think is important. But I also think sometimes whole class punishments can be hard for those really quiet kids that they're not doing anything and they're getting punished because the rest of the class is acting that way. Now, I have explained to my students in the past that sometimes even when you're not doing anything, like you not doing something is a problem. Like, this is where you've got to push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and help. Like, sometimes the teacher needs help too. Like, sometimes you need to like maybe lightly tap someone and give them the quiet signal, or remind them that we should be doing whatever the teacher said. And so I do think it's important for kids to take some ownership and leadership skills in this sense, and like kind of step up and help a little bit and be part of the solution and not necessarily like a neutral party. Because it's kind of like if you see something a crime happen, if you just walk on past because you don't want to be involved, well, yes, you're not guilty, but in a way, like, you didn't help whatsoever. And there is a good Samaritan law. So it is the same kind of mentality where we want kids to like really start to step up and be part of a solution. So I do think in that sense, like, that's important. So the whole class thing, that's an idea. That's a possible idea. Somebody was talking about, a teacher was talking about that they have school pictures. They have like the school pictures on elf bodies, and that they keep track of how many days they went without a consequence. And so if it was like 5 days they went without a consequence, they'd get a small prize, or 10, they'd get a medium prize. And if it was 15, they get a big prize, and things like that. So that kind of like reward system, or like some people call bribery, or things like that, that can work for those times during the year. I still think if you listen to my conversation with Melanie Redden, a second grade teacher from Florida, she had some outstanding ideas about building rapport with kids, and she really addressed some behavior concerns as well. And she had some really positive solutions. So you need to go check that out. If you haven't heard it yet. That was episode 2, and I'll link to it in the show notes, because she had some really good things. So like the calming corner, and like working around like embracing your mistakes and your failures and learning from that and reflecting. I think all of that has to still be going on during the holiday, leading up to the holidays, especially during that time, because the kids are really off their game at that point because they're just so excited. So a couple of other ones that people had some really good ideas. Some people were talking about having a holidays around the world, and that they did different reading activities, and they even changed classrooms. Like they worked together as a team. They made a plan, and they had classes and kids changing rooms so that they kind of had a new environment. Sometimes a new environment can actually be really powerful. And then they worked on some STEM challenges, like elf on a shelf, or shelf for the elf, or train tracks for the Polar Express, and things like that, which I think anything that has to do with STEM or Makerspace is so incredible. And I haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, but I think that it is like such a thinking experience for kids. And I actually have created some Makerspace moments in literature, is what I've called them. And I've taken literature, and in this case, it would be Christmas literature. And then they've had to, whatever the problem is with the character, they've had to create, they've had to plan it, they've had to design it, they've had to create it and build it in order to solve the solution. So whatever it is that they have to do to solve the solution, and that's very hands-on. Yes, it's totally still hitting standard literature standards, because you're doing a close read with the book first. That would be your first thing. And you may be working on vocabulary, or how the illustrations affect meaning in the text, or you might be working on point of view. What if the story was told by somebody else, one of the other characters? And so after you've done some really good literature work, then you're able to do a makerspace or a STEM activity where, and in a makerspace, it's really more focused on the engineering standard of them building and creating a model and trying to solve a problem, or revising an already existing solution and like making it better. But if you want to throw some science in there to have a little more of an integration, then I definitely think, like, I recently made a Christmas Trolls Makerspace, which is the book by Jan Brett. And I was like, well, you could totally add some science in this, because one of the solutions that kids came up with was like a sled, or like a pulley system for the hedgehog, in order to get the items that the trolls were stealing from the boy and the girl to their treehouse. Like, how did they get it up their treehouse? Like, they could create a pulley system, and that's where you could talk a lot about force and motion. And so I'm like, there's totally some science in this. And I mean, sometimes you feel like you have to reach a little bit when you're trying to like base it around a book. But I also feel like sometimes it's just a natural integration. And in this case, like, a lot of force and motion ideas were going through my head, especially because I was just recently looking at a force and motion unit. And so I'm like, oh yeah, you could totally do that. And if you are going to integrate some math, a lot of people are working on a double and triple digit subtraction and addition at this time. And I'm like, you could start counting up the items, or you could think of 10 groups of the items so that you could make double digits. And I don't know. So there's just some different things that you can add when you're talking about, like, specifically talking about STEM. But I think STEM activities, back to the point, I think STEM activities during Christmas is a great idea, because yes, they're hyped up, and that can be like, you do need to use some caution. You want to definitely have it well planned out. You want to have all your materials. You want to think it really through so that you know that it's going to go through pretty well, because it can be kind of a rambunctious, exciting activity. And on top of their already out of control behavior, sometimes people get a little leery of trying those kind of activities. But I have found that when I've kind of reined in the excitement with something that's hands-on and engaging, that they've gotten so into what they're doing learning-wise that they've kind of forgotten, oh yeah, it's Christmas. So it's something to consider. A lot of people were talking about having their like party and their like their pajama day, and they're like reading, and like doing a game day, and they're watching a movie and those kind of things at the very, very end. I actually typically used to like to do it on the like second to last day, because they were so hyped up in the first place for it. And I normally did the Polar Express, like a lot of people do the Polar Express. I actually have a close reading for the Polar Express as well, and even a compare and contrast with the movie, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But I started doing an adorable movie called Yes, Virginia, and because I actually have a connection to like how the movie was made, and so I really wanted my kids to see it because of that. And it's such an adorable story. And then they came out with the book, so I was like, oh, we're totally going to do a close reading on the book, and then we're going to do we're going to watch the movie, we're going to compare and contrast. And the good thing about Yes, Virginia is it's short. It's like 25-30 minutes, which in my school we weren't allowed to show a movie past 30 minutes, or they had to be like in increments. And showing the Polar Express in increments of 30 minutes, it really takes away from the movie. Sometimes I wonder about those kinds of rules, because does anyone watch a movie in 30-minute increments? It just sounds bizarre. Plus, I feel like telling administrators sometimes at this time, like, this is a time of survival. Like, don't come in and expect to see the very best work. Don't do my evaluation the week before Christmas vacation. It's just a setup for failure, and we have to stop setting teachers and ourselves up for failure. It's wrong, and it doesn't make any sense. That's my opinion. And but I do feel like obviously learning should still be occurring, but let's make it a little bit more fun. Let's embrace the mood and the tone of the season. Let's take the time to teach kids about kindness. That's another idea. Like, get kids to really understand what it's like to be kind to someone else, and realize that not everybody has a lot of things. If you're in a Title I school, or in a really low socioeconomic school, you are seeing that these kids don't have a ton. And so, like, it's not as exciting for them, because they know that it's going to be limited if they're celebrating anything at all. And so sometimes I think it's important to create these special moments for these kids, because they too deserve to feel special, but they also need to understand the gift of giving to others. Something that I recently thought about, and I did create it really quickly, was like teaching kindness through this. Like, everybody gets to be a secret Santa, and you pick a name out of a hat, and then the child gets to create this. I wrote this little poem about being the secret Santa, and then the child gets to write about the child that they chose, the name of that they selected, and then they tell about all the great things about them. But I think that this is a time for a powerful lesson on how you respond when you draw a name, because if you draw a name and you're like, ugh, that's so hurtful to other children. So I think it's important to like give them an example, model what that would look like, what it wouldn't look like a non-example, and then how you can respond to make someone else feel good, and like what it means when you don't do that. So I think that can be a really powerful lesson on being kind and empathetic, and even like sometimes keeping some of your own feelings like back a little bit in this case. If you pick someone that you're not like, it's not your best friend in the world, I think that's okay too, because I think it's important for us to learn that we have, like, even if we don't love a person, when we're in a community such as a classroom, we have to learn to get along with them. And so I think it's a good opportunity to like reach out to that person and think of some of the good things about them. It's also a really powerful lesson on adjectives, like on adjectives of how you describe someone, and not just they're nice, they're fun, they're great. And so this is a good vocabulary time too. So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. So that's another little activity that you can do where you're really focusing on kindness and you're allowing kids to have the gift of giving to others. And I think that can be special. Book exchanges are really good for that as well. But again, if you're working in a Title I school or a school where they have a difficult time paying for things like that, it's hard for them to even come up with $1 for a book. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about things like that. And then I had a teacher named Karen, who was like, if you can't beat them, join them. Have a backup plan for days when they're more active than others. So she really felt like you should stick to a normal routine, but add some fun activities. And I thought that was important too. And a lot of people said this too. Not only did they say like stick to the routine, but they were like, okay, stick to your routine. But in the routine, like when it's your reading block, that's when you're doing a close reading with Yes, Virginia, or you're doing a close reading with Christmas Trolls, or whatever book that you're doing. Like use a holiday book, like use literature. You can still teach the same standards. I can still teach about characters and how they overcome obstacles in pretty much any story that has, good characters, and most of them do. So that can be really like a fun thing to do. You're still staying in the routine of your reading block. However, you're using some holiday things to like liven it up and like embrace the spirit. Some people were talking about, this is like heartbreaking. Like people were talking about they're testing during this time. They're testing. A teacher named Frida, and I was just thinking, like, first of all, what are you getting at this time of year? What are your results? What does your data look like in a time of year where kids are so excited or where kids are really struggling? And either one, and yes, we can have that any time of the year, but this is like the whole country like changes. So to say that it doesn't impact them it doesn't make sense. So to test them at this point in the year just seems outrageous, honestly, in my opinion, just seems crazy. So let's go back to some other positive, good things that you can do. I mean, obviously, if you're testing, then let's actually talk about that because we have to have solutions sometimes for things that make us really tired. Like that's something that used to exhaust me, was the testing. And that's quite frankly one of the reasons why I was like, I've just had enough with this. I think we've gone off the deep end when it comes to testing. I think determining what kids know, I think that's very important. But constantly testing them every single second and then doing a test for a test for a test to practice another test is just ludicrous. So, so what can you do in this situation? Okay, well then you prep them, you get them ready for the actual test. And I don't mean prep them by practicing testing. I mean like you've given them the information, that you've taught them in the best way that you can. You've used good practices, and now they're testing. After the test, there's got to be some times where they have some downtime. Now you can read a holiday story. Now you do the Secret Santa. Now you do a STEM activity. So before the next day of testing, or you tell them after the test, we're going to be doing this. So give it your very best, and then we'll do a Makerspace afterwards. So there's always ways to kind of throw in some good on top of it. I had somebody say, this one was the most hilarious, where they took a lot of personal time off. They're like, personal time off. And then they're like, just kidding. And, which is like so tempting when you're in those moments where you're like, oh man, if I could just use one of my personal days, or I'm feeling sick. So, and yeah, sometimes you got to do it. But there are some districts that are like absolutely no personal days for the last 3 weeks leading to winter break, which I have been there. Oh, Karen, in a primary group that I'm in, she said a genius thing that I did a couple of times, but I don't think I didn't do it consistently. And I think she's so right. She said to set up your classroom for returning as if you were expecting a sub for 3 days. Leave detailed lesson plans on your desk along with everything that will be needed to complete these lessons, like books, the papers, the supplies, and then you will go into your vacation ready, set to come back to a smooth return. I think that is so smart because when you come back, you're so tired. And if you have everything all set up and ready to go for at least the first 3 days, you can kind of ease your way back into it. And I thought that was genius. And then a lot of people, I heard this at least 20 times in various groups, were like a glass of wine. They're like, wine will do it. Wine will help you survive. And then I had somebody that I thought that was funny. She was like, I'm not a wine drinker, but my colleagues, I've heard from my colleagues that it works really well. I thought that was hilarious. So there were some really funny things too that people were saying. And yes, it is hard to get through, but I think when you embrace it and when you do things that are fun for the kids and you make things hands on and you give them give them opportunities to like settle down, like give them some silent reading time, like give them some quieter things, give them a math page with that you have to color and find the mystery picture. Like I think those look so cool. Like they're those mystery picture math pages. So they're still working, but they're also kind of relaxing. I think coloring can totally be relaxing. Now I know some administrators that are like no coloring, which again is another thing to me that seems outrageous because those kinds of things like they help us. There are studies that show how they help us calm down. And sometimes we need to do that, or even deep breathing activities. I've just recently started training to be a yoga teacher. And when we start talking about like what helps your central nervous system relax, it's like breathing through your nose, out through your mouth, or breathing through your nose and out through your nose even. Like just that calm kind of breathing in, a 6-second inhale and a 6-second out exhale is definitely one way to like get your nervous system to calm down. So why not do that with kids or even yoga with kids? Like, you could do a Christmas yoga activity. It could be to a Christmas song and you do a couple of postures and get the kids to like really calm down. So those are just some suggestions for how you might possibly survive. Take a look at my blog post too for some more specifics, and also check the show notes. And I hope that you have an outstanding season and that your desk is loaded full of Christmas presents, and you know how much you're appreciated, because at times like this, like I mean, the funny thing too is that when I was doing a little bit of, this is my last thing, when I was doing a little bit of research on how to survive, it was how to survive when your kids are home for the Christmas break. And I'm like, okay, so parents get this. They're having a hard time surviving. There's blog posts out there to help them survive when they actually have their own children at home. So if they have to figure out how to survive with their own children at home, then what do we do with 18 to 20 to 30 kids of someone else's? So don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. Like actually know that there are blog posts for the parents. So that means that it's important for us to like let ourselves off the hook a little bit and enjoy them and just spend some time enjoying them, because you're getting ready to go into your own 2 weeks home with your own children possibly, or your own family. And I don't know about you, but my family, I'll tell you, when it got to be Christmas time or Thanksgiving time, I was stressed out. And I mean, it's a lot of obligation. And sometimes I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves. And sometimes I just fantasize about flying away on a plane and just having a quiet Christmas or Thanksgiving by myself. So either way, any way you choose to survive, I wish you the very best. And I can't wait to talk to you soon with another guest, and you're going to love it. All right. If you like what you hear, make sure you're subscribing, so that you can get the notifications of when this podcast is up. It's every Thursday. I look forward to talking to you again. This tired teacher is ready for a long sleep. Take care and sleep tight.